Welcome back guys, I'm Crystal and today we're going to be doing some sprayed edges. Now you can obviously purchase sprayed edge books. It's really easy in the UK, but in Australia it's really rare and really hard to get them. I was really lucky when I went home and saw my dad last. He built me a book press. So this is just 2 planks of wood that have been put together with some thread bolts and screws so that you can put your book inside and then put down and squeeze and press it together. I have a couple of books that I was planning on unhauling anyway, so I'm just going to be spraying their edges today as a bit of a practice. The Betrothed, Lily and the Octopus, and The Keeper by David Baldacci. If you saw my wrap up, you would see that I read these two last month and wasn't a fan. David Baldacci's The Keeper I just got in like a box somewhere and wasn't planning on keeping it. So as you can see, we've got different coloured edges here. We've got like a brown one, a white one, and one that's kind of in the middle of the two. So my plan is to kind of test it on the 3 different colours, see how it works, see how the press works. And yeah, so I figured I'd take you guys along for the ride, show you my setup, my system, how it works, whether or not we are successful or not. I just want to let you know the paints that I got were $2 each. They're just Montmart. They're acrylic paints. I got it in green, yellow, black, blue and red because I figured like they were the main kind of colors I have on my shelf. So I figure I will test with a few of these to try and match or look nice with the cover that I'm going with. So I've picked 2 blue books and a kind of brown book. So I'm thinking what I might do is go with black sprayed edges for one, blue with another, and then maybe, I don't know if the yellow is going to look good with this one, so I might go red or something just to kind of test the different colors and see how they stick on the pages. So that is my plan today. It's my day off. I've already recorded 3 episodes of my podcast, and so I'm just going to chuck in an audiobook and paint some pages. The audiobook I'm listening to at the moment is Linger by Maggie Stiefvater. This was the one that you guys voted on my Ping Pong poll for. I'm really enjoying it. I started it last night and I'm about 100 pages in. So yeah, enjoying it so far. I will just chuck on my studios, listen to this while I paint. So let's see how this goes, shall we? Now we obviously don't want any paint to get on our actual covers, so my plan was to do this with like newspaper or something, but I didn't have a newspaper around. So I've just got some paper here. My plan is to just kind of put it around the edges and tape it down so that my covers are covered effectively, and then I'll be able to paint around and then take off the cover so that my actual book isn't damaged. It's just the pages that get it stuck on it. Now a lot of people have issues with painting edges in that the pages get stuck together. I've seen a couple of people mention that the best way to avoid this is when it's like dry but not quite fully dried, maybe like 10 minutes after you've painted them, is to kind of like flick the pages apart. I did do a test one of this when I was down at my parents' house and it seemed to work out quite well. I've since gifted that copy so I don't have it anymore, but yeah, the fanning technique, I guess you could call it, seems to work. So I'm hoping that works again today. So I think I'm going to do David Baldacci's The Keeper first with the black sprayed edges. So I'll get it all set up, show you what it looks like before I start painting, and then we'll dive on in. You can see I've just put paper around the edges so it covers here and here. For some reason when I was doing this one slid down a little bit, so I'm going to readjust this one so it goes a bit further back because I don't want to be getting it on this side of the cover if I can avoid it. it seems to be that that is just the way that the book is. It doesn't actually go any further in, so I'm just gonna have to be extra careful when I'm coming to this part of the book. So as you can see, the book is now pressed between the two pieces of wood. The pages are really stuck together, so I can't really move them apart. So what I'll do is I'll paint this edge first, give it about a couple of minutes, take it out, give it a little bit of flick so that they don't stick together, spin it around, and I'll do either other ends. And then I'll show you when it's done. As you can see, I have finished the front side all painted. I'll let this sit for about 2 minutes or so, undo, take it out, give it a little bit of a flick, and then I'll swap it around and do the other side, and then I'll do the same and do the other side again. But it's looking pretty good so far. The trick is to not use too much paint, so you really want to use probably only maybe 2 small like paint brushes full of paint to do each side, purely because the more paint you use, the more likely it is for your pages to stick together. So it may seem like it's not going a long way, but just to continue to brush over the top of it and eventually it'll spread. And I also like, once I finish a side, to just bring the paintbrush from one end down to the other along the same grain as the pages, just to give it that smooth look so that it does kind of like blend, I guess you could say. I mean, I'm no expert at this, I don't do it all the time, but the results I have gotten I've not been too mad about, so it's worth it. Obviously it was handy for me because I had a handy dad who could make a press for me, but I have heard that people do this with like 2 chopping boards from like Kmart and the nuts and bolts. As long as you've got a drill, like it's pretty easy to make. I just decided to like lacquer mine and kind of make it a little bit more pretty. Now as you can see, I've done all 3 sides now, so I've got inside, left side, right side, all done. What I'll do is I'll let that sit there for probably about 5 or 10 minutes, and then I release it and give it all a big flick to get all of the pages unstuck from each other, and show you the finished project before I move on to books 2 and 3. So this is all dry. It's been about 5 minutes or so. Went and washed my paintbrush, refilled my coffee. Choked on said coffee. So we should be good to go. So all I do is I just unscrew the bolts to take off that pressure. Now if you want these to last a little longer, the trick is push down as you unscrew and screw them on so that it's not shredding the bolt anymore. That just lifts up and then book comes straight out. I'm going to leave the papers on just in case there's anything that hasn't quite dried, but the trick is you just grab your thumb, start at the beginning and just kind of like put your hand across and just do like this. Now it hasn't quite dried, I don't know if you can see that, but it is kind of putting my fingerprints across where I'm doing that, which is more prevalent in different colors obviously, so I'm just realizing I've got paint all over my hands. The black is obviously showing that a little bit more, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. I'll just let it sit a little bit longer before I continue to do so. But that's the action you pretty much want to do, is just grab from one side and flick it open. Some people will go through and individually open up each page after they've done that to make sure that there's definitely nothing stuck, which you're more than welcome to do so, because there may be one or two that do get stuck. That's really easy to do. You just kind of grab the page from the bottom, slip down over the top, and then down to the top, which is not dry, as I'm discovering, because there is a giant chunk stuck to the paper that I've just stuck my hands on. I was too impatient. So you get the idea. That's how you go through it and undo it all. So I am going to leave this set aside with the paper still on it to continue to dry at the side, because there's obviously some big chunks down the bottom where I've put my hands on. Wash my hands, get the Betrothed put into the press, ready to paint red. I think I'm going to go with red because she wears red roses in her hair. It just kind of makes sense. As I'm unhauling these books anyways, or I may just use them in photos now, I'm kind of wanting to get a variety of colours. The good thing with the paint that I am using is it does wash off really easy, so you don't end up with paint all over your hands. And I think if you get like a little bit on the edges and you notice soon enough, like before it completely dries, you should be able to wipe it away with like a wet wipe. I haven't had that happen to me yet, so we'll see, but yeah, that is an option. So I'm gonna get Betrothed in here ready to go. I've just gotta tape it up first, and then we will jump on in. So, press out of the way, tape, and paper. Now obviously this isn't the most beneficial way to do this. I know some people will paint it with washi tape because it peels off the book quite nicely, and just do like the edges. So whatever works for you, whatever you've got lying around, as long as you have it covered, you should be safe. I am such an idiot. You know what I could be doing, which actually makes it easier to get like right in, is put the paper this side and then like flip it over to cover the cover rather than cover in, which was the way I was doing it. And then you can just like stick it in, close it, and go across like this and fold down that edge. That's so much easier. I'm such an idiot. I was making this so much more difficult for myself than I needed to. Now, it is potentially beneficial to, rather than just going over and having things overhang, because that's where I was getting a lot of my paint stuck, like see how this kind of hangs over, is kind of fold it like a Christmas present, but without damaging the corner of your book. Like you want that corner, you can't see, but there's a, you know, the corner of your book like on paperbacks, you want that to stay down, because otherwise you're going to be painting the top corner of your book. I feel like I'm wrapping Christmas presents. Christmas in May, is that a thing? Maybe I should be listening to some Christmas tunes. Okay, so we are all covered. The same thing happened obviously in paperbacks. It's quite hard to get right to that edge. So just be careful when you do this little corner here on top and bottom. But other than that, you should be covered all the way around. Now you obviously want to put like quite a lot of pressure to keep those book pages like stuck together, but I know people do this with just other books, weighting it down. Like you don't necessarily need a book press. I just find it's easier because then you don't have other books like that can potentially fall over or get in the way. And the good thing about a press is that you can pick it up and move your page around so that you can access what you want. Now what I tend to do, I don't know if you can see that, is I have it kind of sticking out just a little bit so that it is not like super in. The reason I do that is so that I don't end up with paint on my press and then my page sticking to my press. So I have it stick out a little bit when I'm painting the pages because it just makes it a little bit easier. So we're going to go with red on the Betrothed. Okay, so all 3 sides are again done with the red. I'm going to let that sit in there for another 5 or 10 minutes or so. I'm going to go get some lunch because Anthony is on his lunch break, so I'm going to eat and say hi to him. And then I'll come back and like shake this out and finish my last book. So I have taken the paper off the first one, which as you can see has beautiful black edges on it. They turned out really good. I'm really, really happy with it. Now the pages are stuck together, as you can see. The only downfall was on the inside cover. I did get a little bit of paint that kind of went over the lip and stuck to it. And that also happened on the back side, where a little bit of paint went over it. And I think that was just because I was using too much paint and it kind of went through when I took it off too soon, but it hasn't actually ended up like on the inside of the cover, so it's just on those pages, but everything else is all fine. Now I am going to help show you how I get this one out and what it looks like when I put the pages through. So I just unscrew. It's been probably close to half an hour or so. I went and had lunch and it's just been sitting in here. So you can see what it's like when it's fully dry and how I separate the pages. Of course it's going to not behave now that I'm filming it. All I do is, while the pages are still, like the white pages are still on, I just, oh no, I waited too long. Okay, so this is what happens when you wait too long. So I went away and it's dried too stuck together. So I can't do the whole flick pages. It is slowly starting to separate, but it's not doing it as easily as it usually would if I had done this before I walked away. I will eventually be able to separate these, it'll be fine. It's just going to be a harder process where I'm going to have to go through each page and individually separate them, which is fine, it's just more tedious. So that is a good example of what happens if you wait too long to separate your pages, is they just kind of like don't do the simple, easy kind of separation. So I'll go through and I'll individually like separate those a little bit later. But as you can see, it's very easy to just put your finger in, separate down the edges and go through. So it's not completely unfixable. It's just frustrating that I waited too long because I wanted to go and get some food. But yeah, all I pretty much do is I untape this, and then that just gets separated from the final page. Just nice and easy. And then that just comes straight out. And then you've got your back page, nice and easy. Same thing will happen with the front. Comes out nice and easy. Just make sure that it hasn't stuck to that front page. As you can see, it has. The way to get that out is you'll see that there is a little bit of a lip kind of under here. So you'll stick your fingernail or something underneath it. I can't do it while staring at the camera. Get your finger in there and just, because I'm trying to do this at the camera, I've ripped it because I'm doing it from a wrong angle, but pretty much all you do is just gently kind of get your finger under there and pull it apart. Because I waited too long to come and separate this, that's my own fault. It's dried to the paper. That usually wouldn't happen if you did this like before everything dries. So unfortunately, it's going to take me a while to separate this one. I'm going to have to do it very, very carefully. This is why I wanted to test this on books that I was potentially unhauling anyways. So if the pages do get damaged, it doesn't really matter because it wasn't a book I wanted to keep. But as long as I take it easy and get my fingers up and underneath it, you can get that off with minimal damage. So I obviously did tear that page there because I was trying to show you guys as I was doing it. But other than that, like, it has come off okay, and it isn't too damaged. These are obviously like quite stuck together. As you can see, it's kind of in chunks rather than the previous one, if I compare this to this one, where this is just nice and easy to do. And it's because I waited too long to separate this one. So there you go, you can see the comparison between one and the other. So I would recommend not letting it sit there for too long before you take it out of the press, and give it a little bit of a flick down, because then you'll actually get what you want, which is the nice and easy to open up and read book without having things kind of like stick together. See how this one's kind of in chunks and doesn't separate very well. This is fixable though. If you do get this, it is fixable. All you have to do is just go through each individual page, really gently, slowly put your fingers through, go to the next one. It's just more tedious this way, so I like to try and do it while it's still a little bit wet, and then you get this effect instead of this one. So now that we've learnt that lesson together, let's do this final one. We're going to do Lily and the Octopus, and we're going to do this one with a light blue paint, just because it's got a blue cover and I think it's going to look good. So I just finished the last book. I'm going to give it a couple extra minutes to dry before I open it up, but I'm going to go through and kind of just finish separating these pages while I wait so that it's good to go. Now, the way that you can kind of tell if it is ready to go is if you kind of touch it, it's still quite a bit sticky. You want it to be not quite as sticky, but you don't want it to be completely dry. So because that's the last edge I painted and it's only just a little bit too sticky, I think now is the perfect time to do it. Otherwise, I'm worried the other pages are going to dry too quickly. I'll just make sure as I separate, I just won't touch that sticky end. So we've got it out. We will just start to see that's much better. See how it's separating much easier than the red one that I'm still working on. These pages are much less stuck together because I got it at that point that it hadn't been sitting here for too long. The other thing you want to do is after you've done that is make sure that the last page and the front page haven't stuck to the page that you have stuck down. Looks like this front one is starting to get stuck a little bit, so you just stick in your thumb where you can and stop it from sticking. Just like that, so it's nice and by itself. Now, because the white pages I have on the front are kind of a little bit like got paint on them, I am going to take them off so that we don't risk it sticking again. But I don't want to put that on my carpet, so I'm going to sit it there. And the same thing with the one at the back. You can leave this on a bit longer if you want to, but you just have to keep remembering to separate those front and back pages, otherwise you risk them sticking together. But removing that, like everything else is pretty dry, so you don't have to worry about it transferring to the other pages. So there you have it. That is my blue one with Lily and the Octopus. I have my red one, which is Betrothed, and my black one, which is the Keeper. So I'll give you a bit of a close-up. These are the three books that you have, and then we have our coloured edges. Obviously this is not going to be high-end. This is not going to be as good as the book boxes that you get. It doesn't have any stencils on it. It's not high-class paint, but it does the job if you're wanting something like this done at home. I just will give you a little bit of a recap of how I went through it, what I did to get the process of these sprayed edges. So first up, you want to use pieces of paper to cover your front and back cover page, ensuring you can get it as close back to that spine as possible. I know it is quite difficult in paperbacks to get too far back, but you definitely want to get back as far as you can. You then stick it inside your press or underneath some books just to weigh it down so your pages are as squished together as possible. You then want to paint it. I use acrylic paint, but I think I've seen other people use others, but I just think acrylic is cheaper and good quality, I guess, for what I'm wanting to do. You can get it in a variety of different colors. I was pretty much just using reds, blacks and blues today, but I also have greens and yellows that I can use on other books. You then want to paint your front edge, then give it about 2 minutes before you undo your press and move it to the other side to do your other edges. Then you want to do the same thing, wait about 2 minutes, flip it around and do your other edge. Give that edge about 1.5 minutes or so. Then you want to pull it out and flick the pages apart. You then probably want to let it sit for another 2 minutes or so and then reflip the pages, ensuring that the last page and the first page have been removed from the paper that you've used to cover your front and back cover. As soon as you can, you probably want to remove the paper because it's potentially going to have paint that will continue to re-stick to those front and back pages. You probably want to leave these for a couple of extra hours before you give them a solid like flip. Otherwise you can end up with like frictioning of the paint, so you end up with what looks like white speckles. This is probably a good example of it on this one, considering this is the one that I've had to like really mess around with because I stuck it down. I don't know if that's going to come up, but you can kind of see how it's got these little white bits here. This is just the pages are kind of disintegrating a little bit just because it's a paperback with lower paper, like mass market paperback kind of quality. So the pages aren't as good a quality, so you kind of get that like whiteness that doesn't look as great. But that's because I had to mess with this one because it was so stuck together. But as you can see, you don't have that on the black other than with the pages separating because of it being an older book. So if you do have any questions about sprayed edges and how I have done this or how the book press was made, send me a message over on Instagram, DM on Instagram or Twitter, or you can leave a comment down below and I'll try and get back to you as soon as I can. But thank you so much for watching, guys. Until next time, happy reading!